What's going on, guys? Welcome back to my channel. In today's video, I'm going to be talking about the second round of the playoffs. But before we start, make sure to like the video and subscribe if you haven't already. The first series up is between the number 1 seed, Cleveland Cavaliers, and the 4th seed, Indiana Pacers. First up, I want to say how impressive the Pacers were this series. There was not a single Pacers player that was bad. Tyrese Haliburton had the quietest and loudest series of all time. He did most of his damage in the 4th quarter of the series. Well, his scoring at least. He scored 35% of his points in the 4th quarter alone. The Pacers had the lead for a lot of this series, and whenever the Cavs would go on a run or take the lead, he would hit big shots to train their momentum. His playmaking was on full display as well. His gravitational pull was opening up the whole Pacers offense, and it left the Cavs stunned, especially in Game 5, where he scored 15 points in 1 quarter, and he had like 3 straight possessions where he hit back-to-back-to-back threes. Andrew Nembhard and Aaron Nesmith were both phenomenal in this series as well. Nembhard's defense on Donovan Mitchell was top-notch for the most part, and Aaron Nesmith was playing incredible defense on Darius Garland when he came back from his toe injury. They were also hitting their shots from beyond the arc. In this series, Nembhard averaged 14 points, 3 rebounds, and 7 assists on 52% from the field and 50% from free, compared to 10 points, 3 rebounds, and 5 assists on 46% from the field and 29% from free in the regular season. That is a considerable upgrade, and it's not like it's a one-time thing either. He's proven from the Bucks series and last postseason that he's a serious playoff riser. In this series, Aaron Nesmith also averaged 14 points on 50% from the field and 44% from free. Pascal Siakam was relatively quiet in this series. He only averaged just under 18 points on 53% from the field and 43% from free, compared to 20 points in the regular season. But his efficiency did go up. It seemed he wasn't as involved or interested as you'd like. Miles Turner, however, did not disappoint. He averaged 16 points and 7 rebounds on 51% from the field and 56% from free. His defense was shaky for a lot of this series going up against the Cleveland Bigs, but he did have possessions where he looked like the usual Miles Turner defensively. Their bench was also spot on. Having a productive bench come playoff time can be tough, but the Pacers set a precedent on how playoff benches should be. TJ McConnell and Obi Toppin were brilliant. Benedict Mathurin had moments of brilliance and also moments of head scratches. The Cavs did not look like the 64-win team they were at all. Everyone was out of rhythm. Donovan Mitchell averaged 40 points in the first 3 games, but his shots weren't falling at all, especially his threes. The Cavs were pretty dominant in the paint, and I was shocked that they went away from that down the stretch in most games of the series for pretty high-volume ISO ball that just didn't work. They prided themselves on their ball movement in the regular season, but there was none of that against the Pacers. I get Darius Garland was injured, but there was no excuses for how bad he was. They didn't need him to score. They just needed him to be a pure point guard and pass the ball. There are reports the Cavs may blow it up in the offseason, but if it was up to me, I'd keep this team together for at least another season. The next series up is between the Minnesota Timberwolves and the Golden State Warriors. There's another legend, Anthony Edwards, has eliminated from the playoffs and it's Jimmy Butler. I get Steph Curry was hurt, and that sucks, but I really couldn't see the Warriors beating the Wolves even with Curry playing. It definitely could have gone to 6 or 7 games, but they didn't have enough to beat Minnesota 4 times out of 7. In the 5 games, Anthony Edwards averaged 26 points, 7.5 rebounds, and 5.5 assists on 47% from the field and 44% from free. It wasn't just Anthony's scoring that was on display. It was also his playmaking and his decision-making, especially when it came to getting double teams. Julius Randle was fantastic yet again. In this series, he averaged 25 points, 6.5 rebounds, and 7 assists on 53% from the field, but an abysmal 29% from free. Just like Edwards, Randle's playmaking and decision-making has been improved tremendously. Randle, being a playmaker, was pretty much unheard of for most of his career, but in this series alone, he's had 2 games where he's recorded double-digit assists, including one game where he had a double-double with 24 points and 11 assists, and then another game where he had a triple-double with 24 points, 11 rebounds, and 11 assists. Other than those 2, there weren't a whole lot of guys that were doing much scoring, except for Jaden McDaniels and Nickeil Alexander-Walker at times. In this series, Jaden McDaniels averaged 13 points, 5 rebounds, just under 2 steals, and 1.5 blocks, where he shot 52% from the field and 30% from free. Nickeil Alexander-Walker was inconsistent scoring the ball, but regardless if his shots were falling, he was leaving it all out there defensively. Dante DiVincenzo, Mike Conley, Naz Reid, and Rudy Gobert were all pretty underwhelming, but they won the series, so I guess it doesn't really matter. Ending the series like that hurts if you're a Warriors fan, but that's basketball for you. Even though they weren't very likely to win, even with Curry, they would have stood a chance considering they won Game 1. It's clear the way this Warriors team is constructed, they won't win a championship, so they really have to go all in to maximize the Curry, Butler, and Green era, which means trading Kuminga, which might suck, but if it means building a contender, or at least trying to, it's gotta be done. Another series where the Warriors' offense struggled, but coming up against another great defensive side in the Wolves, it makes sense. Jimmy Butler had a pretty underwhelming series considering Curry was out, and he needed to step up, but he still averaged 20 points, 7 rebounds, and 5.5 assists on a pretty poor 43% from the field and 30% from free. Without Steph, Jimmy really had no offensive help, so all the defensive attention went to him. That's his only excuse. Other than one game where he had a 28-point performance, Brandon Podziemski was underwhelming again. He only averaged 11 points, 6 rebounds, and only 3 assists, while shooting 33% from the field and 30% from free. Jonathan Kuminga finally got minutes in his series and showed why he should have been part of the rotation in the first series. He averaged 20 points and 3 rebounds while shooting 54% from the field and 42% from free. I don't know what's next for the Warriors, but this group won't stay together. The next series up is the biggest upset in recent playoff history. It's between the New York Knicks and the Boston Celtics. What a complete shocker the Eastern Conference semi-finals were. We all know how good Jalen Brunson is, and in this series, he averaged 26 points, 4 rebounds, and 7 assists, while shooting 44% from the field and 39% from free. Considering he's been labeled a playoff dropper for a lot of his recent playoff appearances, Karl Anthony Towns had another great offensive performance. In the series, he averaged 20 points and 12 rebounds on 47% from the field, but an abysmal 15% from free. His free ball was the only thing that wasn't going his way in his series. He did struggle quite a bit when the Celtics would attack him, but he's never been that great of a defender. But he was able to dig himself out of the hole he was in. Moving on to a guy that was huge defensively and came on when Cat checked out, Mitchell Robinson. How can he be so skilled at grabbing offensive rebounds as a guy as big as he is? Josh Hart is another player that's elite at grabbing offensive rebounds, but he's a lot shorter, so nobody really puts a body on him, even though they should. But Robinson is huge. There isn't really an excuse not to have someone box him out at all times. 47% of his rebounds in this series were on the offensive end. That's a crazy stat. His ability to protect the paint is very handy for the next two, considering Cat doesn't do that. Speaking of Josh Hart, he was also a huge factor in this series. His scoring isn't the reason why he gets playing time. It's his energy, his rebounding at his height, his playmaking, and his defense. But in this series, he wasn't that bad of a scorer. He averaged 14 points, 8 rebounds, and 4.5 assists, and 46% from the field, and 38% from free, including a triple-double with 10 points, 11 rebounds, and 11 assists in a closeout game against the Celtics. OG Anunoby had a pretty disappointing series when it came to his scoring and rebounding that he showed in the second half of the season. He only averaged 14 points and 5 rebounds on 36% from the field and 37% from free, but he was playing pretty good defense on Jason Tatum, so it is excusable. Same can be said about their other wing, Mikal Bridges. He also averaged 14 points, 5 rebounds, and 4 assists on 42% from the field and 33% from free. Deuce McBride came off the bench and gave Tibbs some great and much-needed minutes off the bench in this series. The stats don't tell the full story on how he impacted this series. I really hope Tatum's injury isn't as bad as it seems, and he can make a comeback before the end of next season. But unfortunately, it's not looking very likely. In the 4 games he did play, he was pretty good in the first half of the game. Then, for whatever reason, he completely fell off in the second half, and mainly in the fourth quarter. In the 4 games he played, he averaged 25 points, 11 rebounds, and 5.5 assists on 40% from the field and 37% from free. Jaylen Brown was also very disappointing in this series. He only averaged 21 points in this series, including 20 when Tatum was playing, 6 rebounds and 5 assists on 40% from the field and 28% from free. Considering he was the Finals MVP just last season, these are extremely disappointing numbers. Peyton Pritchard and Derek White were probably the only ones that didn't go completely missing, especially White, but he did struggle in their win-or-go-home game. But it wasn't just the players that were to blame for losing this series. I thought Joe Mazzulla was incredibly mediocre too, especially in Game 6. Jaylen Brown was pretty much the only one making shots, and Mazzulla made him guard Jalen Brunson, resulting in him getting in foul trouble and eventually fouling out in the third quarter. I don't get what the point of having Drew Holiday and Derek White is when you're going to make one player do everything. And the last series is between the first seed Oklahoma City Thunder and the 4th seed Denver Nuggets. This series had some very entertaining basketball for the most part, except for Game 2 and 7 when the Thunder blew the Nuggets out. Even though he lost, Aaron Gordon had another great series, especially in Game 1, where he hit that spectacular game-winning three that shouldn't have ever happened because the Thunder shouldn't have kept fouling, but it doesn't matter anymore because they won the series. Shai Gilgeous-Alexander had another great series where he averaged 29 points, 6 rebounds, and 6.5 assists on 52% from the field and 33% from three. A lot of people are going to talk about his free throws, and yes, he did shoot a lot more than everyone else, but even if you take away the free throws, he's still an elite player and deserves his MVP. This Thunder team is so deep, I can't see a world where they lose to the Timberwolves in the next round, or to either the Pacers or the Knicks, whoever wins that series in the finals. Alex Caruso, someone who I did not think I'd talk about in this series, but he was incredible. He's 6'5", and he played the best defense on Nikola Jokic that we've seen in Jokic's career, other than the Lakers earlier in the season and the Timberwolves last postseason. His ability to poke the ball free and deny Jokic anything is something kids should be studying, trying to get better at. And it's not like he was a non-factor on the offensive end either. In this series, he averaged 10 points, 3 assists, and 1.5 steals on 45% from the field and 42% from three. Jalen Williams struggled for most of this series offensively. He only averaged 17 points, 5 rebounds, and 6 assists on a very poor 37% from the field and a terrible 23% from three. But he was incredible on the defensive end for most of this series. But considering he was an All-Star and was named on an All-NBA team, you'd want a little more production. Chet Holmgren was good too defensively, especially when he was next to Isaiah Hartenstein, where he got to be a roamer. He wasn't the greatest scorer, but he was rebounding at a great level. In this series, he averaged 14 points, 11 rebounds, and just under 2 blocks, while shooting 46% from the field, but a poor 22% from three. Isaiah Hartenstein was also great for the Thunder. Going up against Jokic is never easy, and he did hold his own for the most part. You're never going to stop Jokic, but he did decent at it. His floater game is elite, and that's something the Thunder don't utilize enough. In this series, he averaged 11 points and 8 rebounds while shooting an extremely good 59% from the field. The Thunder's role players were all good too. Cason Wallace, Lou Dort, and Aaron Wiggins were all positives when they were on the court. I was surprised the Nuggets were able to compete enough to send it to 7 games. I thought the Thunder were going to exploit their weaker defense more than they did, but they were able to hang in there until Game 7. It may be a hot take, but Christian Braun was the Nuggets' best player in this series. He was consistently playing great on both ends of the ball for a Nuggets team that isn't great defensively, but was playing as good a defense as you can on Shai. He was also pretty decent on the offensive end, where he averaged 12 points, 7 rebounds, and 2 assists on 41% from the field, but a not so great 28% from three. Nikola Jokic had another historic playoff series where he averaged 28 points, 14 rebounds, and 6 assists, and 47% from the field, and 32% from three, including 2 40-point games, and a game where he grabbed 22 boards. But surprisingly, he didn't have a game where he recorded double-digit assists. For a guy that averaged a triple-double in the regular season, that is highly surprising. But his defense was still a question mark in this series. I don't know where the Nuggets go from here, but if they want to utilize Jokic the best they can, they're going to have to surround him with defenders. That's going to end this video. If you enjoyed it, make sure to hit the like button and subscribe if you haven't already.